Kevwe Ijatomi. Kevwe will be speaking about using automation to drive value creation. Kevwe, this stage is yours.
Thank you, Olga. Thanks. So today I'll be talking about how we use automation to drive value creation, specifically as it relates to FP&A. I will start off looking at the case for FP&A automation. I'll talk about approaches that firms typically can think about as they go on this journey. And then to make it practical and real and hopefully energize some of those creative juices, I'll also share two of my experiences. So on the next slide, I will start off with the case for FP&A automation. At a macro level, the case for automation is pretty simple. It's predicated on how can we as FP&A professionals become better partners to the business. And then how do we reinvest the time that we save into solving the next big business challenge? And emphasis on solving. Ultimately, as you think of this journey, as you embark on the journey, or maybe you're in the middle of the journey, think through your digitization strategy has to be simple. I've spoken to a multitude of finance leaders as well as business executives, and one thing is super clear. There is an inherent need to move finance up the value chain. Business leaders want their finance partners sat in the driving seat with them as they go through some of the challenges that we face in business today. Currently, we generate about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data on a daily basis. Now, just the velocity of this data drives and brings its own challenges. Now more than ever, we want to understand the channels that we're going through to market, the geographical mix of our revenue. So all of that data brings complexity that automation can help reduce and drive. Business leaders want to make decisions faster. What new products should they launch? What solutions should they launch? And what new markets should we go into? And automation brings a bit of speed and also, drives agility in the decision-making process. Resilience, last but not least, we bearing the macroeconomic situations that we're in, digital transformation, COVID-19 brought its own challenges. And so as businesses think of how to become more resilient, automation really plays a facilitating role. On the next slide, I will talk about the approaches to automation. One thing that I will say is, approaches differ. I encourage firms and leaders to just stay the course. I've worked at a firm that looked as automation as a low-hanging fruit. It was a cost-cutting exercise. And I've also worked at a firm who has taken a different approach to automation, looking at it more as a transformative effort and really thinking of it more as a cultural transformation than a cost-cutting tool. And in my experience, the latter approach really drove more benefits for the organization. But a couple of things that I will say is it really starts from the top. The tone needs to be set from the executive team, the lead of the finance organization, as well as a partnership with the business on the why for automation and the value that it brings to the organization. Automation as a concept is one that requires a significant amount of collaboration. It requires, I really think of it as a stool with three legs. It requires bringing in professionals from your IT department. These are the folks who really understand the architectural landscape. They understand, your extract, transform, and load capabilities. The second leg of that stool is really the data engineering organization. Now, different companies will call these functions different names. But data engineering, really understanding AI and ML capabilities, understanding the data warehousing, the data marts, as well as how that data can be really used to drive value. And then the third leg of the stool is the FP&A professional. They understand the challenges the business is trying to solve. They understand the questions that the business is asking. And this collaboration is really important for driving the best outcomes for an organization. I encourage folks to start from really identifying those high value activities. So with all this capacity that automation gives us, what are we going to go do? Are we going to go play more in understanding revenue concentration? Are we going to be more operational and sit with our business partners? Are we going to, really think through market or customer segmentation and really think of how to drive value in translating operational outcomes into the P&L? Last but not least is really think through a growth mindset within the organization. So as finance professionals get this free capacity, 10, 15, 20%, whatever that number is, what can they then fill up the time with? So a culture of learning is super important. But having said all of this, I just want to reiterate, stay the course, whatever the outcome. I think the consistency is more important than what approach each firm uses. This will differ from firm to firm. On the next slide, I will talk about a practical example that I've worked through. So as you kind of think through your own journey, as you can imagine, revenue reporting for an organization 100 billion in revenue or over can get really complex. Now, we had a challenge in this example where revenue reporting was just very complex. The time to get the insights was about 3 to 4 weeks after the event had happened. This drove, different outcomes for the business. So business leaders couldn't be agile. We talked about agility, resilience was a bit low within the organization, and the decision making was pretty slow. And therefore, all of that impacts the competitive advantage of the organization. So what we did in this situation was we deployed some machine learning algorithms that automatically flagged anomalies within the data. We also implemented a natural language model. And for some of you who would already have been on this journey, natural language doesn't always translate into human language. So we used a couple of off-the-shelf solutions, as well as some in-house developed solutions to really translate that natural language into human logic. And the outcome really was the finance professional getting not just reports, but analysis on the drivers of what has changed in revenue. The impact for the business was immeasurable. Business leaders were able to understand insights around revenue in 18 to 24 hours as opposed to 3 to 4 weeks. Decisions could be made relatively quickly on tweaking operational performance or activities and seeing the outcomes come out through the P&L almost on a real-time basis. On the next slide, I will cover my second practical example, which is really translating around the forecasting. The challenge here was, the organization that I was in had a really low predictability on up margin projections. It was not accurate, and so finance didn't really have the credibility, and that seat at the table was a bit shaky. So what we did was, we defined the playing field. What do we want to achieve? Did a ton of process work in order to identify what processes were suboptimal around our forecasting. And then we built models using machine learning that in most cases outperformed the work of our finance professionals by about 80%. The outcome was operating margin projections that were 99.9% accurate, and almost real-time projections on the scenarios of the business.